Is my slide visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So today we'll be talking about uveitis. Okay. So these are your learning outcomes for today's class. At the end of this session, students should be able to define and classify uveitis, describe the clinical features and management of anterior uveitis, and explain about endophthalmitis, its types, clinical picture or clinical features and management. Okay. So coming to uveitis, first of all, you all should know briefly about what is the uveal tract. So as you all have had the class on anatomy of the eye, so we all know that the uvea is the vascular middle layer of the eyeball. Okay, so it comprises of the iris, the ciliary body, and the choroid. Okay, from outside inwards. So these are the three structures which make up the uvea or the uveal tract, and which is in fact the middle layer of the eyeball. So inflammation of the uveal tract. So any structure, whether it is the iris, the ciliary body, or the choroid, so inflammation of all those three or any part of them is known as uveitis. Okay, so uveitis is inflammation of the uveal tract. Now coming to the classification, there are various classification on uveitis. So first and foremost is the anatomical classification. So according to the anatomical classification, that is according to the structures involved. So anterior uveitis, which is inflammation of iris and ciliary body up to the pars plicata of the ciliary body. Okay, so ciliary body, it has two pars plicata and pars plana. So whenever there's inflammation of the iris and ciliary body up to the pars plicata, that is the anterior uveitis. It's also known as iridocyclitis if both iris and ciliary bodies are involved, or if only the iris is involved, that is iritis. Okay, so that's anterior uveitis. Intermediate uveitis is inflammation of the pars plana of the ciliary body. Hence, it is also known as pars planitis. And posterior uveitis is inflammation of the choroid. So whenever there is inflammation of the choroid, that is inflammation posterior uveitis. And if whole of the uveal tract is involved, is there's inflammation of all the structures of the uveal tract, then that is panuveitis. Okay, so anatomical classification. So there's anterior, where the iris and ciliary body, the pars plicata is in. Intermediate is pars planitis, since the pars plana of the ciliary body is involved. Posterior uveitis is inflammation of the choroid, and panuveitis is if whole of the uveal tract is involved. Now coming to continuing the classification, so the second classification is according to the clinical type. So acute and chronic. So acute is if it has a sudden onset and last up to 3 months. So it's a sudden symptomatic onset and last up to 3 months. And chronic is insidious, asymptomatic onset and persists longer than 3 months. Okay, so if it's 3 months or less, that is acute, it is sudden, and chronic, it is insidious finding, and it's asymptomatic usually onset, and it persists longer than 3 months. So that is the chronic type. Now coming to the etiological classification, so these are few of the etiological classifications. So infective, so as we all know, bacterial, viral, fungal, mainly those. Allergic, toxic due to certain drugs. Traumatic, quite common. Okay, so in cases of blunt trauma and all, you get to see this type of uveitis, and uveitis associated with non-infective systemic diseases, and sometimes also idiopathic. Okay, so these are the etiological classification. So these are the classifications. So one, you have the anatomical classification, then you have the clinical classification, whether it is acute or chronic, and the third one is the etiological classification. Okay. Now coming to anterior uveitis, so this is important for y'all. Other posterior uveitis and intermediate, not so important, just few words about that. So anterior uveitis is any condition where there's inflammation of the iris and pars plight of the ciliary body. So patients will come with acute symptoms of painful red eye with loss of vision. Okay, so it is also one of the causes of painful red eye with loss of vision. So along with that, there'll be lacrimation, photophobia, okay, in acute conditions. Whereas in chronic cases, where there's a case of chronic where it's more than 3 months, then usually they are asymptomatic and they'll just have mild redness and floaters, okay, or black spots moving in front of the eye. So acute is more important, where the patient will complain of sudden and painful loss of vision. There's photophobia, there's lacrimation. Okay, now coming to the signs. So when you examine the patient, you can see lid edema. Okay, so the lid will be swollen, and conjunctiva, there'll be circumcorneal congestion. So here, as you can see in this picture, there's circumcorneal congestion and diffuse congestion in the conjunctiva as well. So circumcorneal congestion is congestion all around the limbus, 360-degree congestion around the limbus. And in the cornea, you have keratic precipitates, which is cellular deposits on the endothelium. Okay, so these keratic precipitates is the hallmark in cases of uveitis or anterior uveitis. Okay, so these are keratic precipitates are cellular deposits which are seen on the endothelium. Okay, so here you can see the keratic precipitates. Okay, so these are usually seen on the innermost layer of the cornea, which is the endothelium. So usually you see it under the slit lamp, like here in this picture. So talking about the KPs, you have to remember certain things. So whenever you look at the KPs, they are usually seen in the usually found on the corneal endothelium and usually on the inferior 1/3 of the cornea, okay, in a triangular manner, that is known as the Alt's triangle. Okay, and the KPs, their size is important. We have large KPs, which are also known as mutton fat KPs, usually seen in case of granulomatous uveitis, like in tuberculosis, sarcoidosis, syphilis, all that, and small KPs in other conditions. And another important thing is the color of the KPs. So if they are fresh KPs, they're usually colorless, and as they become old, they become pigmented. Okay, so keratic precipitate is very important. That is the hallmark in cases of hallmark or the pathognomic sign in cases of anterior uveitis. So these are cellular deposits which are seen on the endothelium in the inferior 1/3 of the cornea in a triangular manner. And then you'll have to know about the size of the KPs and also about the color of the KPs. Okay, so continuing on the other structures, so in anterior chamber you have cells, presence of aqueous cells. Okay, so here in this picture, so again this presence of aqueous cells and all, this can be seen only under the slit lamp under magnification. Okay, so these are certain ways of grading the cells. So if it's less than 5 cells, plus minus, 5 to 10 is +1, 11 to 20 is +2, 21 to 50 is +3, and more than 50 is +4. And in addition, we can also have hypopyon or hyphema. So hypopyon is a collection of pus in the anterior chamber, as you can see in this picture down here, and hyphema is collection of blood in the anterior chamber. Okay, so that is the about the hypopyon and hyphema. Okay, so we have KPs and in the anterior chamber. So even if you look with the torchlight, you can see that the AC is not clear. So usually when you look at the anterior chamber, in addition to the depth, the other structure is the other thing to look for is the clarity. So there's no, it's not clear. Okay, some amount of turbidity will be seen. But however, to see the presence of cells, you have to see it under the slit lamp. Another important thing is just aqueous flare. Okay, so aqueous flare, it is seen, it is due to the scattering of light by the proteins which have leaked into the aqueous humor due to from the damaged iris blood vessels. So because of inflammation, because of damage in the blood vessels, some amount of protein get leaked into the aqueous humor, and that causes the scattering of light, and that is known as the aqueous flare. Okay, so faint again is divided, graded accordingly. So faint is just detectable, okay, +1. Moderate is iris details. You can still see the iris details clear. That's +2. Iris details are hazy. That is +3 of flare, and intense with fibrinous exudate. So if there's a lot of exudate in the anterior chamber, then that is grade 4 of flare. Okay, so in the anterior chamber is very important. You'll have to look for cells and flare, but however that's seen mainly by the slit lamp, though of course by the torchlight also you all can have some idea. Now continuing, in the iris you have muddy discoloration of the iris with loss of normal color and pattern. Okay, so mainly when you look at the iris, when you look for the normal structure or the normal pattern, the normal crypts and collaris, they are lost because it is muddy because of the inflammation. And two very important things to look for in the iris are the nodules. So one is the copious nodules, which is seen in the posterior, in the pupillary margin. So in this first slide here, you can see these nodules. So these are the copious nodules, which are seen in the pupillary margin. And Busaka's nodules in the second picture here, that is away from the pupillary margin. Okay, so these nodules, these are present mainly in cases of granulomatous uveitis, like in case of tuberculosis, sarcoidosis, and all that. Okay, and another thing to look for in the iris is the posterior synechiae, which is nothing but addition between the iris and the lens. Okay, so iris, loss of normal color and pattern, muddy discoloration, then you have the copious nodules, Busaka's nodules, and posterior synechiae, which is addition between the iris and the lens. Okay, and in the pupil usually it is a small and myotic pupil. Okay, small and irregular myotic pupil, but however after getting medication, especially mydriatic like tropicamide, atropine, the pupil will become festooned. Like in this picture here, there are places where there's presence of posterior synechiae, and at places this posterior synechiae is broken due to the presence of due to the effect of this tropicamide or atropine. So that leads to a festooned pupil. Okay, so festooned pupil shows that some amount of posterior synechiae is still present and some have been broken due to the effect of the mydriasis. So same here in this, you can see a pupil is being dilated. In other places, it's free of posterior synechiae, where it is still present in this around 7 or 8 o'clock position. Okay, so in the lens, again posterior synechiae, which is addition between the iris and the lens, and iris pigments on the anterior lens capsule. So these iris pigments on the anterior lens capsule, they get, so whenever the pupil is dilated with the help of the mydriatic, some amount of iris pigments get liberated, and these iris pigments go and get deposited on the anterior lens capsule. So hence we can see these iris pigments on the anterior lens capsule here, and the pupil is nice and round, and it is fully pharmacologically dilated. So this is nothing but the effect of mydriasis, which liberates the iris pigments, and that goes and gets deposited on the lens, anterior lens capsule. Okay, now complications and sequelae of anterior uveitis. So because of this inflammation, it can lead to further complications. So complicated cataract is very common in case of uveitis. So here you can see complicated cataract is usually the posterior subcapsular type of cataract. Here you can see the cataract here. Here's some synechiae, and then yes, synechiae here. Then secondary glaucoma, very important, okay, because of trabeculitis, because of the exudates, they go and block the trabecular meshwork, so the outflow is hampered, so that leads to secondary glaucoma. So there can be presence of cyclitic membranes. Then further down, if the uveitis spreads, inflammation spreads, you can also have choroiditis. Okay, and band-shaped keratopathy, which is deposition of calcium in the cornea. Here you can see in this picture. So that leads to band-shaped keratopathy. Papillitis, where inflammation of the optic nerve, and lastly thysis bulbi, as you can see in this picture. So ultimately what happens is that in chronic cases where there is a lot of uveitis, it will lead to shutdown of the ciliary body. So because of the shutdown of the ciliary body, there will not be any production of intraocular aqueous, and that thereby the intraocular pressure will be very low. So that will lead to a shrunken or a soft eye, as you can see in this picture. So that is known as phthisis bulbi. It's mainly due to ciliary body shutdown. Okay, so these are the complications and sequelae of anterior uveitis. So complicated cataract, very important. Glaucoma is equally important, secondary glaucoma. Then cyclitic membrane, because of the various exudates and all which are present, that can lead to a membrane. The inflammation can spread further down and lead to choroiditis and papillitis. And then they can also be band-shaped keratopathy, and ultimately the eye will become a shrunken or a small and a shrunken eye. That is also known as phthisis bulbi. Now coming to the management, which is always investigations and treatment. So in order to find out the cause of uveitis, especially in anterior uveitis, you have to do the following investigations. So hematological investigation, complete blood count with the hemoglobin and ESR, blood sugar, uric acid, various serological tests, test for anti-nuclear antibodies, okay, urine examination, stool examination to look for any ova and all, radiological tests, very important, especially chest x-ray, and sometimes even x-ray of the sacroiliac or the lumbar spine to see for any other problem there, and skin tests, especially Mantoux test to rule out tuberculosis. So basic investigations like these ones should be sent for, and treatment should be started right away. So main aims of treatment is to prevent the vision loss. So first and foremost, we are always concerned about the vision. So hence, the main aim of treatment should be to prevent the vision loss, to relieve discomfort, and to treat the underlying disease. Okay, so to find out the cause and treat the underlying disease, and to prevent visual loss and to relieve discomfort, especially the patient will be in pain. So the mainstay of treatment is of course steroids, and topical steroids are useful for anterior uveitis, and the frequency depends on the severity of the inflammation. So if there's a lot of inflammation, like there's exudates, cyclic membrane, hypopyon and all those, then you go for prednisolone or dexamethasone. Usually prednisolone acetate is given 1% as frequently as 2 RD or 1 RD. But if the inflammation is not that much, then you can go for 4 RD or 6 RD instillation. Okay, so the mainstay of treatment is of course the topical steroids, which is useful for anterior uveitis. Usually you do not have to go for systemic steroids in these cases. It's the topical steroids which have been used. Then the next one is the mydriatic and cycloplegic. Very important, especially in uveitis, we go for atropine, 1% TDS, because it's a strong mydriatic and cycloplegic. So it relieves the ciliary spasm, thereby decreasing the pain. It prevents the formation of posterior synechiae, and even if there is formation of the posterior synechiae, it will break down the recently formed synechiae. Okay, so these are the uses of atropine. So steroids is given, atropine given. You can give an antibiotic ointment at bedtime, since in the night the patient will not receive any medication, so that can be there. And other drugs which are given is the immunosuppressive agents. Okay, but these are not given all the time. There are certain indications for these immunosuppressive agents, like whenever there's sight-threatening uveitis, which is bilateral, which is non-infectious, and failure to respond to steroid therapy in such cases, and in patients where there is side effects with steroids, okay, especially in the systemic steroids which have intolerable side effects. So these are conditions where you go for immunosuppressive agents. Okay, so that is about anterior uveitis. Yeah, it's very important. You'll have to know about the signs, symptoms, and how you manage it. Comes in, you'll get it as SAQs, or very often it comes in the PBQ as well. Now moving to the next topic, which is endophthalmitis. It's also another very important topic. So endophthalmitis is basically defined as an inflammation of the inner structures of the eyeball. That means the uveal tissue and retina, with exudates in the anterior chamber, the posterior chamber, and the vitreous cavity. Okay, so inner structures of the eye are involved, or the inner layers. So the uveal tract is involved, the retina is involved, and you also have to remember that there are exudates in the anterior cavity here, in the anterior chamber, in the posterior chamber here, and as well as in the vitreous. So the inner structures of the eye as well as the chambers of the eye are involved. So etiology, usually the infective type is only seen and the non-infective sterile not seen that much. But exogenous infections due to following perforating eye injuries, following perforations of corneal ulcer, or post-operative infections. Very important in our setup, following any kind of post-operative, especially following cataract surgeries. Endogenous from the bloodstream, and infection from the secondary infections from the surrounding structures, from the sinuses especially. And non-infective is post-operative, post-traumatic, and intraocular. Okay, but for you all, this exogenous and mainly following the post-operative infections are important. So causative organisms, mainly bacterial, Staph aureus, Staph epidermis, Strepto, pneumoniae, Pseudomonas. These are the gram-positive ones, and gram-negative Propionibacterium and Actinomyces. These are important. And fungal is comparatively rare compared to the bacterial. Usually the bacterial ones cause it, and these are Aspergillus, Fusarium, and Candida. Now coming to acute bacterial endophthalmitis, it's a main complication of cataract surgery. So we have to prevent this endophthalmitis, and because it's a very dreaded endophthalmitis condition. So it's a complication of cataract surgery, or for any matter for any other intraocular surgery, but however more often seen in cases of cataract surgery, but very not that common nowadays. So source of infection is the patient's own periocular bacterial flora. Okay, so the own bacterial flora which is present there. So if it's infected, you have to see for that. That's why whenever you post a patient for cataract surgery, you have to see whether there's conjunctivitis or not. Treat it, then only go for surgery. Then it can also be from the contaminated solutions, instruments, all that are used during the operation, or it could also be due to the environmental flora, including that of the surgeon and operating room personnel. Okay, so because of all these features, that could lead to the infection. So these could be a source of infection. Hence, during surgery, you go for painting and draping. So the eye is cleaned very thoroughly with betadine, we paint it, and draping and all other measures are taken. Clinical feature of endophthalmitis is marked loss of vision and severe ocular pain. So whenever the patient comes the next day after cataract surgery, you open the eye pad and the bandage and all, and see for the patient will be in severe pain. Okay, usually in normal cataract surgery, during the first post-operative day, they will not be that much of ocular pain. Some amount of pain, a slight amount of pain will be there, okay, and marked loss of vision. So they will not be able to see in anything, hand movement or perception of light, that kind of vision will be recorded. Okay, so if the patient complains of marked loss of vision and severe ocular pain, endophthalmitis should always be kept in mind. So after that, there will be redness, lacrimation, and photophobia. And then the lids will be swollen and edematous. Okay, swelling, like in any other inflammation, there'll be swollen and edematous. Then conjunctiva, there'll be ecchymosis and circumcongestion. The cornea will be edema and cloudy. There'll be ring infiltration, hypopine in the anterior chamber, very important feature. Iris will be edematous and muddy, and pupil because of purulent exudate in the anterior chamber as well as in the vitreous. There will be yellow reflex due to the purulent exudate, and in the vitreous there will be exudation and intraocular pressure will be high. So when you measure the IOP, it will be high. So these are the signs which have to be looked. So swollen lids, hazy cornea, very important. Presence of hypopine in the AC should also always move towards endophthalmitis. The iris will be muddy and pupil, and the yellow reflex will be there. The vitreous exudation, and there will be absence of the red fundal glow. Okay, because of the vitreous exudation and other exudates in the anterior as well as in the posterior chamber and in the vitreous. So here you can see in this picture some amount of corneal edema, though not that, and some amount of vitreous haze, though the IOL you can see it's nice and shiny here, and then presence of hypopine and circumcorneal congestion. So hypopine and severe inflammation are the hallmarks of endophthalmitis. So here also in this picture you can see a hazy cornea because the iris details are not clear. You can see the congestion, 360-degree congestion here. So some amount of vitreous haze and minimum amount of hypopine. So some small amount of hypopine compared to this. Okay, so hypopine and congestion and edema of the cornea should always point towards endophthalmitis. Coming to the treatment, and early diagnosis and vigorous therapy is the hallmark in the treatment of endophthalmitis. So as soon as you see the patient and if you suspect endophthalmitis because of the features, then you have to suspect that it is endophthalmitis and go for vigorous therapy. So antibiotic therapy is given in various modes. So first and foremost, you go for intravitreal antibiotics and diagnostic taps. So when you're taking out the exudate from the vitreous, so that is an intravitreal tap. So in the same injection or same syringe, you take out the tap or take out the exudate, okay, tap out some vitreous content, which is for culture and sensitivity. Then you give the intravitreal antibiotics. Broad spectrum, usually vancomycin and gentamicin are given. And then subconjunctival injection of steroids, okay, or antibiotics, usually Dexa, Genta, all that is given. Topical concentrated antibiotics, okay, so fortified cefazolin, fortified gentamicin, that is given, and systemic antibiotics also are given. So it's a antibiotic therapy is vigorous and it is started straight away. So first of all, you go for the intravitreal antibiotics after doing the diagnostic tap. Then you go for subconjunctival injection, topical concentrated antibiotics, and systemic antibiotics as well, in order to decrease the inflammation and the further infections. Then steroids, okay, topical steroids in the form of prednisolone. Sometimes if there's a lot of inflammation and a lot of exudates, then systemic steroids can also be given as well. And supportive therapy, of course, has to be given from cycloplegic. So usually we go for the strong cycloplegic, which is this atropine and anti-glaucoma medications. Okay, so these are the medications which are given, and then you follow up the patient, you see the patient, monitor the patient regularly, and if the patient improves, if the vision improves, well and good, you continue the medication. But however, if the patient does not improve, even with the above and intensive therapy for 42 to 72 hours, then you go for vitrectomy. Okay, so you remove the exudates from the vitreous, then you plan for vitrectomy. Okay, so this is about endophthalmitis briefly. So you'll have to know sometimes y'all can get it as SAQs, once or twice it has come as PBQ. So this has been included. Okay, so post-operative endophthalmitis, especially after cataract surgery and all, it's very important. You'll have to rule out any cause of endophthalmitis in patients who complain of severe ocular pain and marked redness following cataract surgery or any intraocular surgery. Okay, so all those are redness and all will be present. There'll be presence of hypopine, the pupil reflex will not be clear, and fundal reflex also will not be clear. Okay, and that is how you're going to treat it with the rigorous antibiotic therapy and with steroids and supportive therapy like cycloplegics and anti-glaucoma, and vitrectomy is usually done if the patient does not improve with the above intensive therapy for 48 to 72 hours. Okay, so this is all about today's class. It's basically about uveitis and endophthalmitis, two very important topics. Okay, so it can come as SAQs and even as PBQs. Okay, so uveitis, the main feature that you'll have to remember, it's a case of painful red eye, and keratic precipitates are the hallmark that are seen in cases of anterior uveitis. Okay.
Ma'am, त्यो yellow reflex भनेको के हो?
येल्लो रिफ्लेक्स भनेको जुन हामीले प्युपलमा गर्दाखेरि नर्मली के हुन्छ, प्युपल अब तिमीहरूले पोस्ट अपरेटिभको क्याट्र्याक्ट केस हेरेछ, सुडोफेकी हेरेछ, आइओएल हालेको केसहरू हेरेछ कि छैन?
छैन म्याम।
ओके, त्यस्तोमा के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि नर्मल क्याट्र्याक्ट सर्जरीहरू गरिसकेपछि चाहिँ अब क्याट्र्याक्ट निस्किसकेको हुन्छ, त्यहाँ सेतो हुँदैन, क्याट्र्याक्टको ठाउँमा के हाल्या हुन्छ त नर्मल इन्ट्राअक्युलर लेन्स हाल्या हुन्छ हैन, आर्टिफिसियल। त्यसले कस्तो रिफ्लेक्स देखाउँछ, त्यसले टर्च लाइटमा शाइन गर्दाखेरि ग्लासी शाइनी रिफ्लेक्स हुन्छ हैन। तर अब एन्डोप्थाल्माइटिसमा त के हुन्छ, त्यहाँ एक्जुडेट्सहरू भएको हुनाले ठ्याक्क भिट्रसमा अथवा एन्टेरियर चेम्बरमा गर्दाखेरि जुन नर्मल रिफ्लेक्स, जुन पिपल रिफ्लेक्स गर्दाखेरि जुन नर्मल शाइन आउनुपर्ने हो नि त्यो हुँदैन, त्यसको सट्टा त्यो एक्जुडेट्सहरूले गरेर रिफ्लेक्ट भएको हुनाले त्यो येल्लो रिफ्लेक्स भएर आएको। बुझ्यो? ओके है, येल्लो रिफ्लेक्स हुन्छ त्यो क्लियर हुँदैन, शाइनी रिफ्लेक्स जुन नर्मल हुनुपर्ने हो इन्ट्राअक्युलर लेन्स हालेपछि त्यो हुँदैन। सो एक्जुडेट्सहरूले गरेकोलाई त्यो येल्लो रिफ्लेक्स देख्छ पिपल रिफ्लेक्समा। एन्ड अनदर भेरी इम्पोर्टेन्ट इज तिमीहरूलाई डाइरेक्ट अप्थाल्मोस्कोप गरेछ कि छैन? गर्यो होइन प्र्याक्टिस पोस्टिङमा? डिस्टेन्ट डाइरेक्ट अप्थाल्मोस्कोपी गरेछ कि छैन तिमीहरूले? नर्मल फन्डल ग्लो देखाएको छ कि छैन विथ द हेल्प अफ द अप्थाल्मोस्कोप?